down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I am your not quite yet inebriated host, Rick. Really quickly, though, before I do anything else, I do have to reach out and I gotta sing. I gotta sing. Bam, 1356 over on the Rumble channel. It is her birthday today. She stopped by just to say hi. She's actually out to dinner with family, I guess. And so I am going to go and just get this out of the way really quick. So, Bam, this is for you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Bam. Happy birthday to you. And let's hope that's better than Joe Biden's version. Oh my gosh. Speaking of Joe Biden, oh my goodness. I've got something starting off the show tonight. I've got something about him today, as well as a whole slew of other things that are going on. I spent a lot of the day today, honestly, trolling through Twitter and trolling a lot of a lot of the liberals over there on the Twitter sphere. You know, even though Elon took it over, it hasn't really turned into like a whole conservative platform. There's still a bunch of liberal lunatics over there who are willing to jump in and do all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to get to all of that, I promise. I also have a fantastic question of the week this week, which will be at the end of the show. And, of course, we've got all of these other things that I typically do during the show, like the reading from the American Patriots Almanac and all of that stuff coming up. So jam-packed show tonight. I am also transmitting back on YouTube. My suspension has been lifted, but considering some of the topics I'm going to hit tonight, it's probably going to get thrown back in. Thrown back in again. I don't know. Anyway, all right. Let's go ahead and get this started off here with tonight's. Oh, before I do this, let me go ahead. I am finishing off my Four Roses single barrel bottle. I am currently out of the single barrel. I still have at least a third of the small batch, and so that's awesome. But yeah, as usual, rocks in the glass. You know, the stones, the whiskey stones. You can kind of see the edge of one right there, just in the reflection of the light and the stuff coming out. So anyway, it's good stuff. Great whiskey. I'm still waiting on my American Badass whiskey, so I'm hoping that it's gonna be here pretty soon. All right. If so anyway, okay, let's just get on to it. Tonight's episode is being sponsored by where did my my script disappeared? Hold on just a second here. Whoops, that's not what I want. Goodness. See, I thought I was going to get this all done really well and nice and smooth and everything else, and I go and screw it all up. All right, so tonight's broadcast is brought to you by my affiliation with the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government, as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Which, by the way, if you follow me on Facebook, I've been posting and forwarding and sharing some of the Institute on the Constitution's stuff. So, and I've also posted a link there that's a little bit different than this link here, but I've also been posting a link there for how you can get their products and support the show. Okay, so use my affiliate link, iotc.whiskeymusings.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.whiskeymusings.online to get great content and learn about our historic founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.whiskeymusings.online. Or, if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. Look at the quality of this thing. It has about an 1/8 of an inch Saddleback leather. The pages inside are water resistant, and look at that stitching. The stitching goes all the way through the binding, binds it all together nice. They have a 100-year warranty on materials and workmanship for this. So if you ever have a problem with this, you can send it to them and they'll either fix it or replace it for free. Anyway, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online to get that, and go check out the IOTC, the Institute on the Constitution, today. And I appreciate the fact that they are an affiliate of mine. It's a fabulous, fabulous organization. It is, by the way, the Constitution is buddy tested and buddy approved. It's also approved by my youngest fan, my youngest known fan, who is a 12-year-old young man who was using it to go and get his patches and badges for his Boy Scouts on his path to Eagle. So that is absolutely, absolutely awesome. And in fact, I think I see his dad over in the chat. So he'll probably say, hey, you were on there again. I don't want to say names because he is a young man, but he is a fabulous young man who got one just before Christmas, which is absolutely fantastic. I love it when the young ones, when the young folks learn about our historical founding and the things that go on with us. All right. So let's go ahead and get further started. And go to On This Day in American History. All right, and of course, for On This Day in American History, I read from the American Patriots Almanac. It is put out by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. It is a fabulous book. Look at that. It is chock full of American historical facts and wonderful things for people to learn and understand. It's not just a daily reminder of things that happen, but they also have great, and in between each month, they have great information as well. So you should pick one of these up as soon as you can, and you can either follow along with me, or you can just read through the stuff that I don't, because obviously I only do it on Saturdays. So today is February 18th, and we're going to talk a little bit about Huckleberry Finn. I am piling up a manuscript in a really astonishing way, Mark Twain wrote his family in 1883. I believe I shall complete in 2 months a book which I have been fooling over for 7 years. This summer it is no more trouble to me to write than it is to lie. The book, published on February 18th in 1885, 2 years later, turned out to be The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Young Huck's raft trip down the Mississippi River with the runaway slave Jim remains one of the most captivating images of freedom in American literature. This second night, we run between 7 and 8 hours with a current that was making over 4 miles an hour. We catched fish and talked, and we took a swim now and then to keep off sleepiness. It was kind of solemn, drifting down the big still river, laying on our backs looking up at the stars, and we didn't ever feel like talking loud. And it wasn't often that we laughed, only a little kind of low chuckle. Every night we passed towns, some of them away up on black hillsides, nothing but just the shiny bed of lights, not a house you could see. The 5th night we passed St. Louis, and it was like the whole world lit up. I used to slip ashore towards 10 o'clock at some village and buy 10 or 15 cents worth of a meal or bacon or some other stuff to eat. And sometimes I lifted a chicken that wasn't roosting comfortable and took him along. Pap always said, take a chicken when you get a chance, because if you don't want him yourself, you can easily find somebody that does, and a good deed ain't ever forgot. We shot waterfowl now and then that got up too early in the morning or didn't go to bed early enough in the evening. Take it all around, we lived pretty high. And that came from chapter 12 in the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And that is today's On This Day in American History. Now, just before I move on from this, we actually have two more things that are now historical events. Number one is yesterday was the 2nd anniversary of the passing of the late, great Rush Limbaugh. The man single-handedly revitalized the talk radio industry and kicked off the conservative talk radio genre as a whole. He is the king. He was just a fantastic voice. And if you have an opportunity or had the opportunity to listen to the man, it was just incredible. And he is an inspiration to all of us that do these kinds of things. I know that his primary resource for getting his word out was on the radio. However, I do know that especially on Facebook, he has some videos where he was looking, they would have the camera looking at him while he was doing his radio broadcast. And of course, he had the excellence in broadcasting, the EIB golden microphone set in front of him, which I actually believe is the same model as this, just in a golden fashion, which, honestly, between him and Dan Bongino, that's part of the reason why I picked this particular microphone, although I wanted it in black, not the typical gray that was there. But that man, I'm telling you, he revitalized an industry almost single-handedly, paved the way for people like Mark Levin and Dan Bongino and Mark Kay and all the other conservative broadcasters that are out there. And so we must pay tribute to him for that. And I am hoping that one day I may get to even just to get remotely close to that level would be an absolute fantastic accomplishment and feat. So my hat's off to Rush. I give him a hat tip, and may he rest in peace. Also today, I heard, and I've been hearing through the news media, that President Carter has been remanded to hospice for his care as of today, and he will be staying at hospice until he passes. And while he may not have been very well liked as a president, he did do certain things that kicked off the greatest president in modern history, Ronald Reagan. And so I have to at least give him a tribute to that, to him, just because of the fact that he was a highly intelligent man. And I would say, he was a great American, unlike some of the Democrats that we have today. Especially the basement dummy that we have in the White House. But the fact of the matter is that Carter was a United States president, and he deserves respect for what he attempted to do during his tenure in office. And so hopefully he will pass into the night peacefully and not be, torn up. So Anyway, all right. So, yes, he is a hospice care at home. You were correct, Amy. That is correct. Hospice care at home. He did a lot of, Carter did a lot of good things. So I'm certainly not going to be angry at him. I mean, he was considered the potentially the worst president of the United States until Obama and Biden got into office. Biden actually stole the trophy from Obama, believe it or not, in my opinion. Okay, in my opinion. So you fact checkers, kiss my butt. It's in my opinion that that speaking. All right, let me just move on. All right, speaking of Biden, Biden. I cannot believe this guy. He does so many freaking gaffes. And unthinking comments that I just cannot understand why people are still looking at him and thinking him as being this great, all-powerful leader. I just don't get it. I just don't. Here's his latest thing that he said. And yeah, this is courtesy of the Daily Wire. But he was apparently speaking at a White House movie screening. Okay. And Biden apparently said that some people still want, sorry, let me clarify this. Some white people, and yes, I emphasized white people, still want to lynch black people. Where in the hell did he get this idea? And look, I understand racism exists. We see it all the time. In fact, I'm seeing a lot more of what would be considered reverse discrimination and reverse racism toward white people from certain segments of society. But the fact of the matter is that why this guy gets a pass for saying this crap. So he apparently was making remarks on Thursday during a screening for Till, which is a film about Emmett Till, who was a 14-year-old black boy who was lynched in Mississippi in 1955. And here's what he said. He said, folks, lynching is pure terror, enforcing the lie that not everyone belongs in America and is not created equal. Biden said, pure terror to systemically undermine hard-fought civil rights. Innocent men, women, children hung by a noose from the trees. Bodies burned, drowned, and castrated. Their crimes? Trying to vote, trying to go to school, trying to own a business, trying to preach the gospel. False accusations of murder, arson, robbery, Biden claimed. Lynched for simply being black, nothing more. With white crowds, white families gathered to celebrate the spectacle, taking pictures of the bodies and mailing them as postcards. Hard to believe, but that was done. But that's what was done. And some people still want to do that, Biden claimed. Now, one thing that is totally missing from this, honestly, that was totally missing from this speech is the fact that it's the Democrat Party, which founded the KKK, that actually did all of this. He not once denounced or said anything about that historical fact. It's not a question, but it's a historical fact that the Democrat Party is the party of the KKK and is the party of division and hate. The Republicans fought against that. We fought the Civil War for it. But this numbnuts of a president, and yes, I did say numbnuts, I'm not going to pull it back now, but this numbnuts of a president seems to ignore the fact that it was his party that actually did all of this. Okay? So, I don't know. This guy is just, the whole lynching thing and slavery happened. The civil rights movement happened, and we shouldn't shy away from discussing it, but we need to discuss it in its actual form, with truth and understanding that it was an absolute horrible time in our history, no different than when we had issues with the American Indians and we, rounded them up like at Wounded Knee and so on and so forth. There's no reason to shy away from the bad because, believe it or not, when you look at the bad and you understand the bad, you can prevent it from happening again. And unfortunately, the Democrats seem to forget that fact, that those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. Anyway, I mean, I just get so frustrated with this guy. I really do. And speaking of enslaving people and everything else, I caught this article today, which I'm going to play a video for you here in just a minute, but this is coming from the Daily Fetched. Apparently, there was a North Korean woman who compares the woke American left to the North Korean manner of brainwashing and influencing of a country. Okay. And so, this person is, I'm going to mincemeat the hell out of this. I know this, but it's Yumi Park. She's a North Korean defector who escaped to the United States and recently spoke out against what she sees as the rise of woke ideology in American universities that reminds her of the brainwashing she experienced in North Korea. Now, she did an interview with Fox News. She described her time at Columbia University, where she heard professors and students promoting the communist revolution and rallying against capitalism. She warned that the same ideology that drove her home country into oppression could happen in the United States if things don't change. Here's her words in a short snippet of the interview.
Things that I was learning at Columbia University really shocked me because it was the exact same thing that my North Korean teachers were brainwashing me in the classroom. In American, at Columbia University, they were literally saying that all the problems that we have is because of capitalism, because of white men. And the solution for all these problems is a communist revolution. In the name of equity, they were saying that we need to destroy this country and we need to rebuild the country in the name of the equality of outcomes. And that same ideology drove my home country into what it is that today is North Korea. And that's why I escaped from North Korea. Without freedom or capitalism, none of these people are even alive today. They've been long dead long time ago from starvation.
Yeah. So, she essentially, sorry, I gotta get this back off. So anyway, that was part of her interview. And what's funny about that is it's not just her that's called for this as well. If you recall back Ronald Reagan, back during his stint of being president from 1980, speaking of Carter and Reagan, Ronald Reagan told a story of some Cuban refugees. And he basically gave the warning that if America falls, there is nowhere else to go. That if America decides to lose its free society and freedom, okay, it's horrible. We're going to end up losing the last bastion of freedom in this entire world if the United States falls to communism. And so the best things is to hear from these kinds of people. I mean, Yuri Desmanov, there's a video of him. Dan Bongino plays him a lot. And there's a video of him that basically describes exactly what the communist era tends to do when it comes to doing these revolutions and these color revolutions. It's just sad. It's sad that people are not listening to these things. Okay? It's completely sad. And while I know some people are saying that we've entirely lost to China, I don't think we're entirely lost there, but we are damn close. We are damn close to losing it to China. Okay? All right. Another thing that happened, of course, throughout my running on the Twitter sphere was this whole thing about the Ohio train derailment. Okay. Now, it's a horrible tragedy. And there's speculation running around about what it is, what happened, how did it happen, so on and so forth. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this. And Outlaw Dogs, if you want to go ahead and submit that, that's great. I will submit that to the questions for whiskey. I'll cover it next week. Okay, so here's the thing, is that this Ohio train derailment, while it happened, and is a horrible, horrible situation, there's been a lot of discussion about government assistance through FEMA and so on and so forth. Well, apparently, the Biden administration and FEMA told Governor DeWine straight up that, yeah, we're not sending you anything. Okay. So that was a few days ago. All right. That was a few days ago. Well, just within the last 24 hours, former President Donald John Trump confirms that he is going to go to East Palestine, Ohio. He says that he's going to visit on Wednesday. Okay. Now, ironically, within a mere number of hours, okay, and Trump basically said, first of all, he he truth socialed this, okay, about it. And he sent it out. And, yeah, it's like, okay, I'm going to go and visit. And so what he ended up doing, honestly, was trolling the president and trolling the entire administration, because within a mere number of hours after he set out that he was going to visit the train derailment site because Washington leaders are too afraid to go, well, guess what? FEMA is now going to dispatch a team to the Ohio town dealing with the aftermath of the toxic train derailment. Okay. A day after alerting Ohio Governor Mike DeWine that the Norfolk's Southern Railway train derailment and chemical spill did not qualify for an emergency declaration, FEMA announced that it will send a team to the Eastern Ohio village dealing with the disaster's aftermath. Now, this was a joint statement on February 17th. DeWine and the FEMA Regional Administrator Thomas Sivak reported that the federal agency has been in constant contact with the state and was working together since day one, but that they wouldn't send a team out right away. Now, the funny thing is, here Trump is, and he just goes, you know what? I'm going to go and visit him. I'm going to go visit him on Wednesday. And sure enough, within a few hours, boom, there we go. Now, there's been a lot of speculation as to what caused this. And we have some video evidence that basically shows that there was sparks coming from one of the train cars, from the front end of it or the back end of the two train cars. You can't really tell the difference, but it basically indicates by some reports and some people that are in the know that there was actually a bearing issue within the wheel that caused it to lock up and caused it to do what it was doing. But on the Twitter sphere, there is a lot of conversation about this idea that a Trump era change in some laws. He apparently rescinded some regulation that dealt with the brakes on the trains. Okay. And it was so much so that our illustrious Department of Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, trying to cover up the fact that he refuses to go there. That's my words, not his. But he went ahead and tweeted about it on Twitter. And he tweeted in particular, his quote is, we're constrained by law on some areas of rail regulation, like the braking rule withdrawn by the Trump administration in 2018 because of a law passed by Congress in 2015. So track with me here. There was a law passed by Congress in 2015 under the Obama administration that they wanted to put a particular type of brake on rail cars. And it was a regulation that would require the use of electronically controlled pneumatic brakes. They call them ECP, okay, for brake trains, or for train brakes. Sorry. Now, the thing about it is that Donald Trump did rescind that in 2018. It was the rule he withdrew from the Trump administration. But you've got to really listen and dig into the details to understand what the hell happened. Okay. And here's what it is. The Department of Transportation under the Trump administration had withdrawn the regulation on the grounds that the efficacy of the ECP brakes is inconclusive and the cost benefit analysis on the devices are negative. So in other words, what they're saying there is that they took a look at the effectiveness of the brakes, the new brakes, the ECP brakes, in comparison to the existing brakes. And it was determined that the brakes themselves provided no benefit in terms of the newer brakes versus the older brakes. They didn't slow the trains down any better. They didn't do anything more efficiently than what the current brakes were. And so what they went ahead and done is they basically said, okay, that's it. And we're going to take out the requirement for it. Okay. Because it isn't cost effective. There's no reason to just spend money on something that isn't going to help or isn't going to be effective. All right. Now that, of course, has like flooded the Twitter sphere. That has totally flooded the Twitter sphere because of the fact that it was a Trump era rescinding the order to do it. Okay. But here's the problem. There's two problems here. There's a big number one problem that is on here is the fact that the derailed train itself, the one that derailed, wouldn't have had the ECP brakes put on it. The National Transportation Safety Board Chair, Jennifer Homendy, wrote on Twitter in response to Buttigieg's tweet, saying a plea to those spreading misinformation. She basically went on to post that past ECP brake regulations would not have prevented the East Palestine train derailment because those rules never applied to the specific train involved in the recent Ohio derailment incident. She puts on there and she says, some are saying ECP, electronically controlled pneumatic brake rule, if implemented, would have prevented this derailment. False, and here's why. She basically went on to say that the brake rules would have only applied to designated high hazard flammable trains, and said that the train that derailed was not classified as an HHFT, but rather it was classified as a mixed use train. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. They also, the DOT also put out that the tweet was misinterpreted. A spokesman for the for the Department of Transportation told the NTD, I don't know who the NTD was, but that the ECP brake had been misinterpreted. In fact, he was clarifying other questions that people had about that particular rule, the spokesman said in an emailed statement. In other words, they're trying to cover up for Pete Buttigieg's incompetency in understanding what the hell happened out there. Okay. So even if the rule had gone into effect, that particular train, because of its classification, would not have had the ECP brakes on it. So, yeah, this is just, I mean, Hominy said, I urge you, let the NTSB lead the safety analysis. Anything else is harmful and adding pain to a community that's been through enough. Okay. So again, once again, you know, that whole jumping before the 72-hour rule, the Dan Bongino 72-hour rule kind of shows up, is probably a wrong thing to do. And so, yeah, it's Booty Judge. Sorry, buddy. You just plain old suck. Okay. I'm sorry. You just do. You were brought in because of your intersectionality. You have no effectiveness. That's all I'm going to say on that. All right. So a couple other things that picked up, and this one is the one that I'm probably going to get in. Yeah. And so, I mean, for an example, like here, Facebook, Jeff Washburn says over on Facebook, it was a bearings problem anyway, 5 miles before the track, before the camera showed sparks flying from the wheels, which is right. That's exactly what I was saying for that. So anyway, this whole idea that it was Trump's fault because of the brakes is completely wrong. It's false. Again, they're trying to pin something on Trump that actually has absolutely no bearing on the man whatsoever. But at least he's able to, just by his mere actions, get help from the government kicked in, just by the fact that he was going to go, or that he was heading out to go see things. All right. The other big thing that has come out is, you remember those lawsuits, the Dominion lawsuits that everybody was saying, oh, you know, the one against, Sydney, oh, I can't even think of her name. But anyway, you know, all of those Dominion lawsuits, they all got, thrown out. And I told you that, no, they were not thrown out. They were just, they were allowed to move forward and things were progressing forward. Well, we're coming around to almost time for trial. In particular, the one that everybody is talking about is the one dealing with the Fox News network. So Dominion went and sued a whole slew of news outlets and other people like Rudy Giuliani and God, I can't think of her name. But anyway, so realistically, these lawsuits against Fox News Network in particular revealed something interesting. Now, if you recall, I say on this program, sometimes it's not the outcome of the lawsuit that's important, but more the discovery process. It's more of the process going through in the discovery phase. Now, the thing that the libs were grabbing onto over on the Twitter sphere is the fact that there were texts about all the Fox hosts saying that they didn't actually believe Donald Trump, so on and so forth. And that may be true. I mean, I haven't really looked into it. I'm going to guess that's probably right. But they were glomming onto that like they always do and totally missing the important part. So there's a couple of things that came out about this in particular. And the first one here is an article by Just the News. Let me go ahead and bring this up, where a programmer was talking to the Arizona Senate. And he basically said, don't use machines because you can never, ever trust them to give you a fair election. This is Clinton Eugene Curtis. And that writing code to flip votes is very easy to do, but hard to stop. Okay. So a computer programmer testified at the Arizona Senate, to the Arizona Senate committee that voting machines are susceptible to manipulation as the panel seeks to require that voting machine components are made in the U.S. and that the source code for the machines used in the state is available to government officials. Attorney and computer programmer Clinton Eugene Curtis told the Arizona Senate Election Committee on Monday that there are multiple ways voting machines can be hacked to change election results. Curtis, who by the way is a Democrat, began his presentation with a video clip of him testifying before Congress following the 2004 presidential election about how he believed that the election in Ohio was actually hacked. In the video, Curtis explained that in 2000, at the request of a Florida politician, he created a program that would flip the votes 51-49 to whoever you wanted it to go to, and whichever race you wanted to win. He added that election officials wouldn't be able to detect such a program. Now, he was testifying before the Arizona Senate. Curtis explained that, Curtis said that flipping votes was very easy to do, but hard to stop. The only way to stop it was by not using the machines. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Okay. Here's the thing that is really, really key about this thing with regards to Fox News and Dominion. Dominion Voting has been constantly saying that they have not had a problem. Okay. And yes, Jeff, talking of Carter, he did an investigation years ago and found these machines to be corrupt and easily manipulated over on Facebook. Yes, Jeff, there's been numerous articles, especially after 2000, and there have been numerous articles, numerous left-wing rags that have all said two things. They have said that mail-in voting is a potential for fraud, and they have said the voting machines are potentially manipulated. But now all of a sudden, because their guy won, they now no longer, they clam up on all of this. And so, here's the thing with this whole Dominion Fox News thing is that everybody was glomming onto the whole idea that Fox News was reporting false information, even though because of the fact that all the hosts were basically saying they didn't agree with with Donald Trump about this. Okay. But the fact of the matter is that there are some challenges. And I got kicked onto this by a Gateway Pundit article. Now, I don't usually follow them. I don't usually, hit on them, but they brought this out. And it's a Fox News filing that shows the Dominion voting system executives, including Eric Coomer, knew its voting systems had major security issues and was hacked and was riddled with bugs. Now, the file is over on Scribd. I've included it in the show notes. You can scroll down, you can find and go over that. Okay. Now, the statement that is key to this is right here, and I'm going to read you a little bit of it. Discovery in this case has revealed that Dominion's own employees expressed serious concerns about the security of its machines. Mark Beckstrand, a Dominion sales manager, confirmed that other parties, quote, have gotten a hold of Dominion's equipment illicitly in the past. And that's according to Exhibit E3. Beckenstrand identified specific instances in Georgia and North Carolina and testified that a Dominion machine was, quote, hacked in Michigan. Beckstrand confirmed that these security failures were reported about in the news. And just weeks before the 2020 presidential election, Dominion's Director of Product Strategy and Security, Eric Coomer, acknowledged in private that, and I'm quoting him here, our shit is just riddled with bugs. Okay. Indeed, Coomer had been castigating Dominion's failures for years. In 2019, Coomer noted that our products suck. Coomer had a message in November 5th of 2019 that came from. He lamented that almost all of Dominion's technological failings were due to our complete effed up in installation. Okay. And then he also, in another instance, identified a critical bug leading to incorrect results. That was in January 5th of 2018. He went on to note, it does not get much worse than that. And while many companies might have resolved their errors, Coomer lamented in September 25th of 2019 that, quote, we don't address our weaknesses effectively. All right. So here's the thing, folks. Okay. I don't know whether the machines were handled inappropriately. I don't know whether there were some issues, issues and things like that. And unfortunately, every single state is going to have to look at these things and look at them and should actually scrutinize these things every single election cycle, period. But I do know this. I do know that there are reports of machines that were attached to the internet, that there were reports of machines that were accessed by IP addresses that are typically coming from China. Now, whether or not they actually did anything or they got in or whatever, I don't know. But what I can tell you is there's enough of information, even if it's anecdotal. You would think that the integrity of our elections would be so tantamount and so high up on people's priority lists that they would go ahead and examine and investigate all of these things as much as they can, and to dig into them completely in that. I don't know what the hell's going on, but they are essentially turning their noses up at stuff like this, which, speaking about turning their noses up, the other thing that was kicked off this week was part of the concept that, you remember that oh God, I can't even think of his name now. God dang it, it escapes me. But that gentleman out in Utah who brought a case in front of the Supreme Court with regards to taking out Joe Biden and reinstalling Donald Trump as the winner. That case that was originally agreed to be heard by SCOTUS was then decided that they were going to deny his writ of certiorari, which, by the way, I did an episode on this. You can look back in my archives and you can pull this out. But apparently the appeal has now gone to the Supreme Court, and reports are saying that the Supreme Court has not just said, okay, we're done with this out of hand. They have actually agreed to hear the arguments. And so it's apparently on the docket for the Supreme Court justices to examine the appeal that was submitted by those gentlemen. And so, yeah, they went ahead and are looking back at it. Now, because that happened, I'm just going to caution you ahead of time. First of all, let's be real about this. This is an extremely long shot that the Supreme Court of the United States would actually bring that up, okay? But the thing about it is that it is a long shot, and long shots do come in. So there's no reason why we can't at least hope and pray that the Supreme Court of the United States will actually show a bit of integrity and at least take a look at the argument that's in front of them. But, you know, we'll have to find out. We'll have to see. It's I don't think, I haven't heard or seen that it's on the calendar yet, but I do know that that's at least put into their docket for them to examine this particular legal request by the gentleman out in Utah. And I'm sorry, I forget his name, but it was him and his brother that were putting it together. But anyway, all right. Now let's move on to the next thing. The next thing, of course, has to deal with the whole idea of trying to disarm the public. Let's disarm the public, just completely ignore the Second Amendment and disarm everybody who essentially isn't on board with the whole, you know, take over and have the government give you everything kind of thing. So, So the thing about it is that we had a couple of shootings that happened that, you know, sparked the whole gun debate again. The latest one being in Michigan at a Michigan university, which, by the way, was perpetrated by a known felon who was not supposed to be carrying a firearm, period, anyway, but somehow he got a hold of them. And by the way, it wasn't that scary black AR-15 that he used. He actually used a pistol for this. But ignoring all of that, and not to mention the fact that the ethnicity was not right for the narrative, okay, and yes, Jody, you're right. It is the Brunson brothers. I want to pull that up. It is the Brunson brothers. I'm correcting for the whole SCOTUS case that's up against the Supreme Court now again. The long shot, the extreme long shot, and I mean extreme long shot. So don't get your hopes up about it. But it's okay. You can go ahead and pray about it. Go for it, please. They're going to need all the help they can get. Anyway, okay, back to this. So this whole thing about, you know, the guns and everything else, the last narrative of Michigan, which was a huge deal when it happened, everybody was like, oh my gosh, there's another mass shooting. Ah! Well, you know what? We're back to the same thing. I mean, it doesn't fit the narrative, so it gets shoved down immediately as much as they can be. The other thing that gets covered up by the mainstream media, because it does not fit the narrative, is when people use guns for self-defense. Check this little gem out that I found. This comes from Fox News. A Texan's licensed to carry bystander shot an El Paso mall shooter as he started to target more would-be victims. Oh, my goodness. So, police in El Paso, Texas say the licensed to carry bystander shot the alleged gunman who is accused of killing one person and injuring another 3. The suspect, who is a 16-year-old Hispanic male, is accused of shooting the individuals after a confrontation ensued between two groups at the Cielo Vista Mall on Wednesday evening at 5:05 p.m. The El Paso Police Department said the confrontation eventually escalated into a physical fight, and the 16-year-old pulled out what? Did he pull out an AR-15? Did he pull out a MAC-10? No, he pulls out a handgun, fatally shooting Angeles Zaragoza, 17, and injuring another 17 and 15-year-old. Police say that Emmanuel Duran, 32, who was a license to carry holder, shot the suspect as he was pointing his gun toward the direction of more bystanders. Now, there's a video that comes along with this link. I'm not going to play it. But the fact of the matter is that now we have, once again, we have a good guy with a gun taking care of a bad guy with a gun, which is, of course, a narrative that these people don't want to accept. And by these people, I mean the lunatic left and the gun grabbers. Now, Biden, of course, has been calling for an assault weapons ban because for some damn reason he seems to believe, and I've shown it on this show, I've proven it on this show, that the 1994 Brady bill did nothing to stop anything. In fact, it did. I mean, it isn't even a perceptible dent in the mass shootings or the experiences of the gun events and incidences. There wasn't even anything there. In fact, studies have shown that it did literally nothing as far as they could tell, if anything at all. So the thing about it is that we have the state AGs apparently have put Biden on notice over his call for an unconstitutional gun ban. And this is over on Town Hall in particular. But apparently the more than a dozen state attorneys have put President Biden on notice Wednesday with a letter slamming his State of the Union call for unconstitutional ban on assault weapons. And it was led by Montana AG Austin Knudsen. Knudsen, along with the attorney generals from Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming, all slammed Biden for his irresponsible and unconstitutional demand that Congress ban firearms commonly used by law-abiding Americans for self-defense. So anyway, the attorneys general put Biden on notice that with every tool at our disposal, we will oppose your attempt to trample on Americans' fundamental right to defend themselves with guns. And there's a bit of a quote here. I'm not going to read it because I can see on my time I'm starting to lose some time here, and I've got a lot to get to. But anyway, the point being is that apparently there are some smart some smart attorney generals out there. And if you happen to live in any of those states, congratulations. I unfortunately don't. But if you happen to live in one of those states, that is absolutely awesome. One thing that I'm kind of surprised at is I don't see Florida on here, but I'm sure that it'll eventually show up, before the thing actually gets to a particular point within it. And by the way, one of the arguments that these guys always talk about is they're like, well, even regular guns, and gun owners are approving of this entire thing. Well, that may not be as true anymore as what it used to be, because this popped up, and this was put together by the basedpolitics.com, a Brad Palumbo and Hannah Cox collaboration. Oh, whoops, wrong one. Sorry. I was looking at the Washington Examiner. The Washington Examiner had this piece where it said that Biden's misfire, majority turns against assault weapons ban. So apparently in a latest Quinnipiac University poll, 48% in the poll oppose Biden's ban and 47 support it. While this is pretty obvious that the nation is split based on this poll, okay, and you know what, we have conflicting arguments. I mean, there are arguments on both sides, but the plain and simple fact of the matter is that the Second Amendment clearly states that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. End of story. There's not even, I mean, I don't even know why this is even a debatable option for Americans, unless they plan on doing a constitutional amendment, which will never get passed based on these polls. But the numbers do not show the overwhelming support that the president and liberal Democrats are calling for. They keep saying, and they put out there multiple times, that they have overwhelming majority support to get rid of what they call assault weapons, which of course they don't ever qualify what an assault weapon actually is. And the thing that they seem to glom onto, which is the AR-15, is actually used a infinitesimal number of times versus things like shotguns, handguns, even people's fists and other blunt objects like baseball bats, hammers, etc. And they refuse to look at those stats and actually understand them. I have covered them extensively on this show. On this broadcast, I have shown you multiple times the statistics. They are not lying. In fact, they are likely underreported anyway. But the point being is that the big, bad, scary AR-15 that Biden scarily believes, can like cut you in half, is not the weapon of choice for these people. And, again, there's no reason to try and ban these assault weapons. The other undisputable truth that is out there is the fact that no matter what happens, all the laws in America, you could add all the laws in America, and Prohibition actually kind of showed this. Even if you pass the law, people are going to break it. The criminals are going to do what the criminals are going to do. They give a damn what's written down on a law book, especially when they're not punished harshly for their criminal behavior. That's just a simple fact that these people are just clearly not getting. And what's even worse is the fact that you have places like this. And so now I'll go back to the Brad Palumbo article, that you have Second Amendment groups like Everytown. They grossly misrepresent the gun death data. And, again, gun control advocates play very fast and loose. This is in the article, very fast and loose with the data around gun violence. And if you're not paying attention, then you could sit there and say, oh, yeah, you misrepresented statistics. You could easily fall for their misrepresentation of the quote unquote facts. Okay. And I would suggest you might want to take a look at this. But they say that every town wrote apparently on Instagram. They basically wrote that guns are the number one killer of college-age people in America. Just days after the shooting at Michigan State left those 3 university students dead. This is, of course, a harrowing statistic to read. And it gives the impression intentionally that all of these deaths are the result of campus shootings. But the data that they talk about, even the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, which, by the way, they're no arbiter of truth, by the way. But they don't even offer an age breakdown of the data. There's a whole bunch of places. I mean, it's literally basically like this. They're doing certain things for sensational headlines. That's what they're after. And anyone who goes and actually digs into the data can find and refute them very, very quickly. So once again, Biden and his administration are lying. They're pulling crap out of their butts, like typical for this administration. I mean, Biden has a full career on his plagiarism and his lying. And literally, that's just a huge, huge problem. But again, we're going to have to, we're going to have to stand up for that and, stand up to him again. And and they always seem to blame, which Jody brought up a good point here. You've never seen a gun jump up and shoot itself. They always seem to blame the inanimate object, and they never want to blame the actual shooter. And the late, great Ronald Reagan basically said that we need to, and I'm paraphrasing here, we need to get rid of this concept that the society is the criminal out of these things, that society is to blame rather than the individual lawbreaker. Okay? So anyway, So a couple other things happen, and these are all kind of disjointed. So those are my packed together articles. These articles are a little bit disjointed, but I felt that I needed to bring them up to you for tonight. So if you recall, I don't know, probably about 6 months ago or so, I had mentioned, and I had done an article or done a show where an article popped up about the fact that that Biden administration was about to hand over some of our sovereignty to the World Health Organization. Okay. And so here's something that popped, and in particular, let me rephrase this, or let me phrase this and frame it properly. Okay. But the Biden administration was going to hand over American sovereignty to the World Health Organization when it dealt with things like pandemics. If you recall the article that I was talking about, it had to deal with the World Health Organization signing treaties with, all these different nationalities across the globe under the guise of attempting to help them out with their pandemic responses. Okay. And unfortunately, he apparently is still pushing for that. Let me show you this. Okay, the Biden admin, this is according to the Epoch Times, the Biden admin negotiates a deal to give WHO authority over U.S. pandemic policies. Now, the individual that's writing this article talked to a person, and I got to find it here. So what they're doing is they're basically trying to get to the point where we have essentially a centralized response throughout the world, which, of course, they did such a wonderful job with COVID, wonderful job with COVID with regards to this. It's just a mess. But anyway, the point is that a key question that has come up multiple times is whether or not this is actually circumventing the American Constitution. And this is the part that I really want to focus on because of the fact that this is really, really where it kind of comes down to it. The person that was interviewed, Boyle, let's see, where is the name? I want to find Francis Boyle, who is a professor of international law at Illinois University, basically told the Epoch Times that both the initiatives that they're proposing Either one or both would set up a worldwide medical police state under the control of the WHO, and in particular, the WHO Director General Tedros. If either one or both of these go through, Tedros or his successor will be able to issue orders that will go all the way down the pipe to your primary care physicians. And one of the things that Boyle was talking about is that whoever drafted this clause knew as much about U.S. constitutional law and international law as I did, and deliberately drafted it to circumvent the power of the Senate to give its advice and consent to treaties, to provisionally bring it into force immediately upon signature. He also said, in addition, that the Biden administration will take the position that this is an international executive agreement that the president can conclude of his own accord without approval by Congress, and is binding on the United States of America, including all state and local democratically elected officials, governors, attorney generals, health officials. Okay. Now, there are several U.S. Supreme Court decisions that may unfortunately support the Biden administration. You have the state of Missouri versus Holland, in which the Supreme Court ruled that treaties supersede state laws. Other decisions like the United States versus Belmont ruled that the executive agreements without Senate consent can be legal binding with the force of treaties. Now, this is where I'm going to be honest with you. This is where the diversion from the strict interpretation of the Constitution is where we have some challenges here. And so this is where, I have been saying this, and I've said it multiple times. The Constitution, when not enforced by a law-abiding and principled people, becomes just a piece of paper. I'm sorry, it just is. And that's exactly what the Biden administration, the Obama administration, FDR, Woodrow Wilson, all of those people did, is they basically turned the Constitution into just a piece of parchment paper. Because if the words that are printed on the Constitution are not enforced, are not adhered to by a principled government and a principled people, okay, we would have essentially where we're at today. And this is why. So, again, this is becoming a bit of a problem. It really is, because we have gotten away from the Constitution of the United States. And that's why I advocate for things like the Institute on the Constitution. We have to get back to a more strict interpretation, the interpretation that was meant by and demonstrated by the founders in documents such as the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, the Declaration of Independence, the Magna Carta, all of these documents that we have to look beyond just the ideas and see how far our government has stepped out of its guardrails and put them back in place. That's why I keep telling you the 10th Amendment, in my opinion, is probably one of the strongest amendments that it is never, ever used. And so it needs to happen, honestly, and we need to get back to the framework and the foundation that the Constitution provides and the proper interpretation of the Constitution that provides. Another article that I encourage you to read, speaking of the IOTC and the Constitution, there's a guy by the name of Paul Engel, and he is a professor dealing with, and I call him a professor, not a big P professor, but a little P professor. He is a student of the Constitution, and he writes a whole bunch of articles. Hillsdale College actually has a bunch of these articles. Hillsdale College is another place to go, as well as the Institute on the Constitution. But both places have wonderful little small articles, blog posts, etc. that can go through and explain all of this. But the one in particular that I'm thinking of actually is part of the Institute on the Constitution, and it's free. You go to the IOTC's website, and you can look at their blog posts, and he talks about in particular the guardrails of the Constitution in multiple little segments. It is absolutely awesome. And so we as Americans have to learn our Constitution, learn the understanding. That's why I support the Institute on the Constitution, the grassroots education. And for you young people, I'm telling you, what you're told in school about the Constitution is likely a lot of falsehoods. You have to get the real value out of it. I highly encourage you to go to the Constitution, take their Constitution 101 course, envelop yourself in the Founding Fathers' words, their intent, and everything else. It's just great. It's just really, 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 really great. I highly encourage, both Hillsdale College and the IOTC are both do a wonderful job when it deals with our Constitution. All right. So what are we going to do? Oh, and actually this next article kind of brings up a point. You know, the other thing that I was seeing on the Twitter sphere, and I'm going to try and make this quick. This will probably be the last one. I still have like a ton of articles out here, but this will probably be the last one before I get to the question for whiskey. So one of the things that I saw running around on the Twitter sphere is the whole idea that Ron DeSantis is endorsed by George Soros. And the left, you know, they glommed onto that. That was one thing that they glommed onto. But the one thing that I saw that was very, very disconcerting, okay? Very disconcerting, was the fact that there were a lot of people on the right who were immediately saying, oh my gosh, if George Soros backs him, DeSantis is done. I'm not going to vote for DeSantis. And the thing about it is that you have to take some of this stuff with a grain of salt. You need to understand there are other forces at play here that are bringing this stuff up. And here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing. George Soros, in an interview, he sat down, he is on video for saying this. His prediction for the Republican nomination is DeSantis will beat Trump. And that's what everybody was glomming onto. But you need to understand, he was not endorsing DeSantis. In fact, far from it. He actually believes that the Democrats are going to do a blue wave in 2024. Guy's delusional, I think, but okay, whatever. But his prediction was dealing with if DeSantis runs, that DeSantis would beat Trump. Now, there's some polling data out there right now, and I'm not going to show it to you. I don't even really want to bring it up, other than the fact that I just want to say there is some polling data that shows that Ron DeSantis is losing some more points against Donald Trump right now. But we are so far, way too early to even start to talk about this. And not to mention the fact that Ron DeSantis isn't even officially in the race. This is all speculation at this point. There's no reason to even talk about Ron DeSantis right now, because Ron DeSantis himself, while he keeps teasing it, which I wish he wouldn't, I wish he'd just basically tell him, no, I'm not running. But even Ron DeSantis himself, 6 months to a year ago, before he got reelected as governor, was saying, I'm not going to run. And as long as he holds to that, okay, then I think we're going to be okay. But here's the thing. There are only two official candidates running for president right now, Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. So any other conversation about Ron DeSantis or Mike Pompeo or freaking John Bolton or God knows who other, Tom, Dick, or Harry that decides to jump in the race, or even, Suzanne, for all I know, that jumps into the race, until they officially declare, all of this crap is just speculation. So don't let it go to your heads, especially those of you on the right. You guys on the left side, go right ahead, speculate all you want. You guys are stupid idiots anyway. But for those of you who are on the right, don't fall for these kinds of traps. The left is just itching for a DeSantis-Trump showdown. They are itching for it. And I would hazard a guess that DeSantis probably knows this. Okay? And the reason for them itching for this Trump-DeSantis showdown is because of the fact they have a basement dummy in the White House who keeps talking about running again. Now, this comes from Politico, which Politico is a completely left-leaning, so far left-leaning rag, okay? They are apparently saying that there are senior Democrats privately talking about the fact that Biden is too old. Now, I will give you Trump is up there too. Trump is up in that same age range, okay? But the Democrats have nobody else. And the reason why they have nobody else is because they freaking pigeonholed their dumbasses into bringing along Kamala Harris, who is a cackling hyena of a complete moron for a vice president. She can't even speak well. I mean, Biden has a reason as to why he can't speak well and eloquently and, does his gaffes. He's freaking old and probably has dementia. You can't use those excuses with Kamala. Kamala just talks to people like they're 5-year-olds and freaking talks in circles and says nonsensical crap. Whoever is her speechwriter, honestly, and I'm kind of hoping that it's not her, but if it is her, she's a complete imbecile when she gets up in front of a microphone. Hell, my conversations that I have with you every single broadcast is, for the most part, off the cuff. I'm just speaking to you the way that I speak to you naturally. I can beat Kamala Harris, hands down, in a speech. I'm sorry. It just is. Guys, we're getting into this way too early. And honestly, the reason why is because Trump went ahead and declared, he declared way too early. And his purposes for doing so, I think, actually were to try and make sure that you cleared the field ahead of time, that people wouldn't jump into the race and that he would by default win the nomination. Not a bad strategy necessarily, but I don't think it's going to work. And it obviously hasn't because Nikki Haley is there. The thing you've got to understand is that anybody that jumps into the race after him and polls much, much lower than him. And, Ben Shapiro actually brought this up too. The larger the field that we have, the greater the chance that Trump can actually pull out a real win. See, if Trump goes head to head with somebody, it's really difficult for him to necessarily gloss over or totally miss some of his character flaws that have literally torpedoed him sometimes in the past. And the fact that he at times goes completely off the cuff and creates nonsensical things in terms of tweets and everything else, which got him into trouble in the past. But if you look at voting in a large field, just like in voting with like a third party candidate, you're watering down everything. And so Trump could win the nomination with, 25, 30% of the vote very easily. And so this is part of the reason why I honestly believe that Trump will benefit from a large field, but I really, really, really do not want Ron DeSantis in. And the reason being, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, I say it on social media, the reason being is I want Ron DeSantis to run in 2028 and 2032. In other words, lock us up for literally 12 years in the White House so that we can ideally get this country back on track. Speaking of getting the country back on track, I will close this off really quick before I jump on to, I want to jump on to the question for whiskey. But the last thing is, I don't know if anybody watched, but there's some revivals, some religious revivals that are happening at some of our Christian universities. In fact, the first one, and I can't even remember the name, but it started with an A. But the first one that was out there, they have actually canceled classes, I think, because of the fact that this prayer service, which started and is continually going on, and a couple of other Christian universities have kicked this off as well, have joined in. There's a religious revival that seems to be coming along in our country. And believe me, we need it. We need it, okay? But the fact of the matter is that we are in sore need to turn ourselves back to our Maker, back to God. Because as John Adams put it, the United States government and the Constitution, I'm paraphrasing here, but the United States Constitution is only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to be the foundation of a government for any other. And I completely agree with that. This is a Christian nation. This is a Christian nation. A nation that is dealing and directly related to Christianity, Christian values, and whether you're Protestant, Episcopalian, Catholic, even Jewish, if you don't have a Western religious focus, this country, this Constitution, which was founded and steeped in Christian theology and ideology, you step away from that and you are stepping away from the tenets of the U.S. Constitution. And that's what the left is trying to do with us. Okay? That's what the left is attempting to do with us. And we need to steer this ship back onto the right path, which again is part of the reason why I support the IOTC, because they recognize the fact that there is a God, that our rights come from him, and that the purpose of civil government is to protect our God-given rights. All right. I've spoken enough. Believe me, there's a few more articles in the show notes. I highly suggest that you grab them and pull it out from that. And Tiedemann, I know you keep. I know that you have a problem with the fact that Trump has character flaws. Everybody has character flaws. Okay, I'm just addressing this real quick. Everyone has character flaws. I totally agree. And politicians are actually some of the worst characters, I think, in the world. They're kind of like one step up from lawyers. In fact, most of them are lawyers. Okay. But the fact of the matter is this, that Trump, unfortunately, has a lot of things in his personal life that the left can attack him on. And because of that, he has issues. And when he goes and tweets out things that are completely nonsensical, even though we know that he doesn't mean them in the way that he does, but when he tweets out things like, for an example, putting bleach in your veins or whatever, all he's doing is giving ammunition to the left. There are times that he opens his mouth and he says stuff that they're totally cringeworthy. And the thing about it is that makes up his character, and that's a good thing when it's a positive stuff, but when he does stuff that opens himself up and opens up a chink in the armor, it becomes a bit of a problem. That's all. That's all I'm saying. All right. Okay. So, and you're right, Sharon, those flaws don't affect his ability to make the country great, because again, I voted for him because of the fact that his policies, his principal ideologies, and everything else lined up with where I think the country needs to go. I didn't vote for him because of his character flaws and his personality traits or anything else. I voted for him because as being given the choice, he was the best of the two in order to get this country back on track. And he actually did quite better than what I was expecting. Okay? All right. Okay. So let me go ahead and get to my question for Whiskey, and we'll bring this down toward the end here. So this is a question coming in from my longtime listener and one all-around good guy, Buddy Weiser. Whiskey, I hope these questions find you well. Well, thank you. They do. He's got 5 of them here. Who created the Secret Service to protect government leaders? In what year was it first used? Did President Lincoln have Secret Service protection? And prior to the invention of motorized vehicles, how was the U.S. president generally transported? And has a Secret Service agent ever been killed in action? Thank you. And of course, I thank you, buddy, for submitting that question. So let's get this going. All right. So the United States Secret Service was actually founded in 1865. For those of you that don't know, the United States Secret Service is actually part of the U.S. Department of the Treasury. And they were originally founded and focused on counterfeiting. And the reason being is because right after the Civil War, there was a lot of counterfeiting that was going on with the monies that between the Union money and the Confederate money. The Confederate money was no good. And so the Union money started coming out, and there were a lot of counterfeiters that were creating fake Union dollars. And so the Secret Service was founded on the premise of investigating and tracking down the counterfeiters. Okay. They actually did not start protecting the president until 1901, after President McKinley was assassinated. So, no, they were not part of President Lincoln's entourage. President Lincoln did get shot and killed, and believe it or not, it was his assassination and President McKinley's assassination that prompted the U.S. government and the executive branch to basically say, you know what, we need a protection detail for this. Now, again, they started protecting the president in 1901, and ironically, there have only been 2 Secret Service agents that have been killed in the line of duty. And the first one was in 1902. And that person's name was William J. Big Bill Craig. He was killed on September 3rd of 1902, guarding, and let me see if I can find him here. He was, where is it? He was guarding President Roosevelt. Okay, and President Roosevelt, he was killed in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. So Craig was killed in September 3rd in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, when a speeding trolley car rammed into the open horse-drawn carriage that was carrying President Roosevelt. So that answers your other question. They did horse-drawn carriages and things like that before they got into the invention of motorized vehicles. But anyway, so yeah, unfortunately, he was the carriage was rammed. He was thrown out, and they think that he actually had enough time to like say something. He turned around and saw the car coming before he was able to say something, and so they think that he like jumped on Roosevelt, tried to protect him. But anyway, he was thrown from the carriage and actually crushed by the trolley. The second guy who has died in the line of duty is a person by the name of Leslie Caufelt. And Leslie Caufelt died November 1st of 1950. He was actually a part of, before what we know now as the Secret Service, it was actually called the White House Police, which is a branch of the Secret Service. And he was killed while successfully defending Truman, President Harry S. Truman, against an attempted assassination attempt at the Blair House, which was where the president was living while the White House was being renovated. And so he is the only other person, Leslie William Caufelt is the only other person that was killed. So they've only had 2 killed in action for that. And let's see. Yeah, so that pretty much covered everything. Now, it wasn't until later, by the way, the Secret Service actually was originally just for the president, and it wasn't until more recent days in like the 1990s that they've actually expanded the tasks of the Secret Service to now protect foreign dignitaries and stuff coming to our shores. And so right now, the Secret Service actually does protect the president. That's their core business outside of the Department of Treasury. But they also will protect foreign dignitaries coming here, and they'll arrange things like, the special events and everything else that you see, like the president join in, but even heads of state, other heads of state and things like that. The Secret Service will coordinate the protection for all of those as well. And that was an expansion of their duties that happened, I believe, in the 1990s. So anyway, hopefully I answered your question. And that will be my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Obviously, I've gone way over my normal time. So do me a favor. If you like what I do, if you like the broadcast, please head on over to Rumble, rumble.com/C/Whiskey Musings Broadcast. Sign up for an account. It's free. And go ahead and follow me, or in other words, other terminology, subscribe to the broadcast. I am looking to try and get 10,000 subscribers by 2023, by the end of 2023. It's a good goal. But anyway, I need to, I really would like to expand my reach. If you can also do me a favor and make sure that if you follow me on social media, you see my tweets, my posts, my, whatever, do me a favor, forward them on to everybody. Expand the reach, because I really would like to expand this channel, and I've got some good things in mind to get this going, and I would really appreciate the help. Social media is my only advertising outlet at this point, and so I really would appreciate the help. I appreciate all of you for coming, and I thank you. I'll see you Wednesday night with a Pet of the Week already on tap. And if you want to submit, I forgot to say this, but if you want to submit a question for whiskey, do so at fans, F-A-N-S, that's Foxtrot Alpha November Sierra, at whiskeymusings.online. Fans at whiskeymusings.online. That's for both questions for whiskey as well as the Pet of the Week. And we will see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast on Wednesday. Have a great weekend, everybody, and good night.